Lord Roy Hattersley opened the Webb Centenary Conference. The session following looked at the life and legacy of Beatrice Webb and her 1909 Minority Report. On the panel, Dr. Dianne Hayter was the Vice Chair of the Webb Memorial Trust, Rushanara of the Young Fabians and Labour PPC, and Webb biographer Carole Seymour-Jones. The session begins with Hayter talking about the enormous obstacles of gender discrimination and conservatism that Webb overcame to have such an influence of politics at the time. It ends with Lord Roy Hattersley telling anecdotes about Tony Blair.
Currently there are still only 8% of vice chancellors who are women. There have only ever been 29 women to sit in the cabinet. And just 14% of council leaders are women today. How much more remarkable was it a century ago for a woman to shape by her intelligence, her writing and her campaigning a society's approach to welfare? There are broader lessons, I think, to be drawn from Beatrice Webb's legacy for our generation of political activists. Her own experience of work amongst those whose condition she strove to improve was, I think, fundamental to her success. She'd worked for the Charity Organisation Society as a house manager and rent collector for a block of working class flats in Docklands, and later giving evidence in the House of Commons, or even journalists, had solid research was imbued with the personal experience of the people that she described. Roy said just now, we need politicians with practical ideas. I think it's really hard to test that phrase. For Beatrice, the barriers to progress were enormous. She was a woman as a thought leader amongst a deeply conservative prevailing culture. There was a decided entrenchment of industrial and landed political power, male-dominated parliament, judiciary and establishment. But she helped engineer a new understanding of society, its place, its players, the centrality of fairness, and above all, I think, the responsibility of government to intervene and shape a better future for all. I think she has a lesson for all of us today.
We can find an inspiration there. They really were, when in their campaign to break up the poor law, they saw it as a crusade. And it was with crusading fervour they went into it. And that really came from that being grounded in that experience, working in Whitechapel, particularly for Beatrice Webb. And I think that's what we need to do to get out and to actually become activists. And the ideas come from doing the work.
It's a basic canon of our belief that we have a mutual interest in a more equal and a more prosperous society. And we have a mutual interest in the prosperity being shared. I don't doubt for a moment that those of us who are well-to-do, and most of us here are, have everything to gain personally, and our children and grandchildren have everything to gain through redistribution of wealth and reduction in poverty. I've no doubt about their mutual interest at all. I just don't think that politicians will succeed in advocating that policy if they only say, do it, it's in your interest to do it. It is in your interest to do it, but I think politicians have to say, do it because it is right to do it. I believe absolutely, fundamentally and crucially in the necessity of a social democratic party or a socialist party or a radical party to have a moral imperative. It doesn't have the drive, it doesn't have the courage, it doesn't have the determination unless it has a moral imperative. If it's saying do it because it's your interest, and it is, that's only half the argument. You don't have the passion that is necessary for reform. But the problem with this government is that they don't believe in enough. Those of us who were once on the right wing of the Labour Party, it's kind of said that changed our perspective or had it changed for us. We never had any doubts. We never had any doubts that what we believed in was right. We didn't believe in the total ownership of the means production and distribution. We didn't believe that the capitalist society was doomed to failure. We didn't believe in the slogans of the left, but we had a very considerable body of opinion. We believed that the competitive system was not the best way of allocating resources or the best way of guaranteeing efficiency. We believe that the equal society was the best society. And what's the matter with the Labour Party at the moment is nobody has that body of belief. And if you don't have the body of belief, you're nowhere.
Winston Churchill says to Beatrice Webb, you should leave the work of converting the country to us, Mrs. Webb. You ought to convert the cabinet. And I think if we're always waiting for the politicians to act, then we'll be waiting. So is there a lesson there for us?
I think we don't have a choice. If we don't act and if we don't use this opportunity to be radical, then when are we going to? This is our time. This is the time to be radical. And for those of us who care about the labour movement, it is important for those who are on the outside or semi-detached, perhaps from what's happening in government. The challenge for any government, if they've been in power for a long time, is incumbency. And it's our job to keep demanding that they focus on the things that matter to society.
When I was writing a column for The Guardian, I wrote a column for The Guardian which ended up with the words, "The problem with Tony Blair is he wants to take politics out of politics." And I'd been asked to do a profile of him for The Observer, and even though I knew him very well, he worked for me for 3 years, I'd behaved properly, I'd asked to go and see him, I was waiting on the list, and I thought, I guess this day when I've written Tony Blair wants to take politics out of politics will be the day when they say come and talk to you about the profile. And sure enough, I did. They did. A friend of mine said, "You'll collapse totally, he'll come up to you out of the cabinet room in his shirt sleeves with a mug in one hand, he'll put his arm round your shoulder, he'll smile and say, 'What's all this about taking politics out of politics?' and you'll apologise." And I went to number 10, and I went and waked on the outside in the hall, and Tony came out of the back in his shirt sleeves with a mug in his hand and said, "What's all this about wanting to take politics out of politics?" And before I had a chance to apologise, he said, "You just don't get it, do you? That's what the people out there want. They don't want any of the political stuff, they just want efficient government." Now, a radical party cannot succeed and probably can't survive if what it stands for is efficient government. God knows we want efficient government, but we want something more than efficient government. The last time I saw him as Prime Minister, he said to me, "You've got many complaints against the government, just tell me one." And I said, "Well, the Secretary of State for Education and Science has said this week what Secretaries of State for Education always say, which drives me wild with fury, that poverty is no excuse for failure. Nobody, in my view," I said, "has ever said poverty was an excuse for failure. We've said it's one of the causes of failure." To which I swear to you, Tony Blair replied to me, "I don't hold with that sort of Marxist determinism." Now, this came to me as a shock, because I was surprised if I don't think he would have recognised Marxist determinism if he'd come up and hit him in the eye. But the idea that this concept was somehow regarded as dangerous radicalism, I mean, there's just not the body of belief there. And whilst theory is only the beginning of politics, if you haven't got a theory to live by, you haven't got a theory to put into operation. And what this government lacks, and what this party lacks, is belief. Above all other things, belief. I'm sorry, I've gone on, but I feel that's